All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this webinar on touring different venues, how to scale and adapt a lighting design, presented by Jennifer Bass. My name is Laura Lawrence, and I'm the Global Director of Marketing at Harman. Just a few things before we get started. Everyone on the call is muted. However, you are able to put in questions into the chat box. We'll consolidate those at the end and put them over to the presenter so that she can answer your questions. This webinar will also be recorded, and the link will be made available a few days after the presentation. We do have a number of other webinars taking place over the next few months for audio, lighting, video, and control, and we'd like to encourage you to take a look at the different webinars in our Learning Sessions workshop series on pro.harman.com, as well as visiting Harman Professional University to see our many on-demand and certification courses that are available to you for free. And I'd like to introduce you to Jennifer Bass, the presenter for today's webinar. Jenny is a touring lighting director, designer, programmer, and technician. Throughout her career, Jenny has worked with a variety of touring acts, including Leah Michelle, The Avalanches, Mary Mack, and Earth, Wind, and Fire. And now I'll pass the mic over to you, Jennifer.
Thanks so much, Laura. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really excited. Thanks, everyone, for coming, and thanks for Martin and Harman for having me. This is going to be an overview of how to scale bands to fit different sizes. Some bands will do, big arenas, but then they'll also do, small corporate events, or they'll do charity events. And how do you keep that design consistent to the band and, what works best for them? Some things that we're going to go over are the prep of, try to have everything ready as soon as possible, or as early as possible so that you're ready once you're in the venue. And then touring with a touring rig and how to size that. And then touring with a house rig as well. If it's not your gear that you're going into every day, how do you keep that design consistent? And then also doing festivals. I'm only going to touch a little bit on how I work with programming with that. I feel like Harman's already doing some other webinars on that, so I'm going to kind of just glance over it a little bit when it's relevant. So let's get started with making a plan. I try to make a plan as soon as possible. A lot of venues won't work more than 2 weeks out, so that's not always possible. But you kind of have to work around when you have time in your touring schedule. So as soon as you get that information, you can start working ahead and trying to get that design fitting into each space as you go. I personally use Vectorworks drafting software so that when I get into a space, I know already, most likely, depending on different changes, what's going to be cut, what part of my design can be realized as normal, and, what adjustments are going to have to be made. Because if you go into a new venue and you have to cut whole trusses, the staff that you're touring with wants to know that as soon as possible so that they know, what truss to leave on the truck and all of that stuff. Have a plan, make sure make sure it's still coherent to the design. If you're, it's not always about fitting as much, lights and truss and stuff into a space. A lot of times it's about the look. So you want to make sure that you're staying true to that look. Get the venue info as soon as possible. Be organized. For me, I try to work as if it's the worst day. We've done 6 days in a row, and I've not slept, and it's, I'm ready for the show to be over, even if it's going to be a lot of fun, but that's what I want to think of. I want to take out all the guesswork. I want to do as much thinking beforehand so that when I'm on job site and I'm tired, I've kind of already outsmarted myself is my ultimate goal. I personally do a folder with all the venue information, all the sizes, if I've done any Vectorworks. Sometimes all you need for that to make sure that your design fits is having the dimensions, the width and the height and all that of the stage. And if you've already got your design drafted, you can just see if it fits, if it's a touring design. And then also your fixtures and all of that. I even label it with, date, location, and as much info as possible, even in the title, So if someone refers to it as the Houston gig or someone refers to it as the September, 8th gig, then either way I can access it quickly and I don't have to necessarily have all of that in my brain. I also try to have it on the cloud and on a laptop because you never know when there's not going to be consistent internet or when your laptop breaks down, but you still need to get all that information. So yeah, and then also I try to keep a log of venues I've been to in the past, even just as a memory jogger, so I can I know what fixtures they have and all of that, just in my own log so that it's all referenceable, with, notes and all of that kind of thing. This venue doesn't have an elevator, so, we're going to have issues getting the spotlights up and that kind of thing. Try to keep the artist in the loop. A lot of it depends which size of tour it is and what the chain of command is. Most of the time, you're just letting the production manager know, we had to cut some truss, or we can't do this one gag because the ceiling's not high enough, or that kind of thing. The artist wants to know as soon as possible that, they're not going to fly that night or anything like that. Or that they have to cut, when they go to that upstage part, that there's not going to be that big special because we can't fit the truss in to get that angle or something like that. But make sure that your number one thing with your design, or if you're realizing someone else's design, is that you're still doing it in a way that is making the artist have their best show as well. I've worked with some artists that hate hate light in the audience. And, they don't want to see their faces. They want to, it's more like a nerves thing. And they don't have as good a show when they have all the light in the audience, and they're not going to be as happy if they go on stage and that's how it is. Some of that won't be as avoidable if you have a lot of bounce light, but, other artists, they have big sing-along sections, and that's their number one thing. So I've had it where I'm, instead of having moving lights on stage, I've just got them focused down on the audience because that was 10 times more important to them than any movement or anything like that. And keep the constant conversation. There's sometimes when part of the design wasn't actually having audience light, and then I said, do you want me to try this? Is this something that we could do? And then, they loved it, and that was, one of the biggest parts of the design. I think it's one of the best things when you bring ideas to an artist and you kind of push their view of what lighting can be as well, and they get more out of it. We had one artist where no one ever mentioned the drums, and then as soon as I saw the drummer drumming, it was like, this has to be a huge moment because they're such a big pivotal part of the show, and it isn't even as big on their recordings or anything, but their live show is like a huge element. Which I think would be a huge loss if that wasn't a moment that was made with, really aided with lighting. Yeah, and make them feel heard, make them feel like, if you can't achieve something that they really want, make sure they know why. Don't just, try to explain, what the physical reasons are, et cetera, that you can't achieve something a certain night. Once you have all the information, I try to patch as soon as possible. A lot of times that's, in the bus the morning before, especially if I'm doing a club show and they're letting us in late, but be aware and don't, go with the flow. Don't be upset if it's too, if they don't, if the information's not up to date, or I worked in one venue where, really, really lovely people, really on top of it, but they just didn't know computers yet. They were still working on getting all the drafting, or getting all the, the drafting and the paperwork done on computers. So they just didn't have that paperwork. I personally wait to clone until everything's flashed out, because you never know when, they said these had these fixtures and they had to put them on a different show, or they, they changed the whole patch for a show the day before that they weren't expecting, so all your paperwork's out of date, and it's just so much easier when you do it in that way. Figure out which fixtures you have beforehand, so that you can figure out, your cloning plan, or what moments need to change before you even get to the venue. Research your fixtures so that, if you have a big moment where you've got the lead guitarist in a square, if you're going into a venue without any, the fixtures don't have shutters, you got to know that beforehand. See if you can gobo, or, if they're willing to lose that moment and make it slightly different. But if you have those conversations before you get, to the stage, in my experience, it tends to go a lot better. And there can be a lot better compromises, or you really find out what's important. Maybe that's the guitar player's favorite moment, and they really want that square, so you're going to get a gobo or cut some gobo out of metal or something. So we're going to talk about scaling a touring rig. This is when you're bringing a rig with you, and it doesn't always fit in the space. And it's, you've got to first think of staying true to design, especially if you're the lighting director. Like I worked with one as a tech where it was triangles, and it's like, you've got to stick to the triangles because that was the whole point, that look. Where if you've made it into other shapes, it's not the same thing. And what's the most important thing to the design concept that needs to translate? Is it that you need all the different angles of the truss so that when you're, doing all the ballyhoos, that it's making, that it's got the biggest movement and all that kind of thing? Or is it the contrast? Or like the Lea Michele was much more of like an intimate show. It was like, we've all entered Lea Michele's home, and she's singing to us, and we're singing with her, and it's very nice, So for that, it wasn't as important to have the moving lights and the haze and all of that. And when we went into venues, it was making sure that that look was achieved instead of, all the extra focuses and that kind of thing. You got to make sure everyone is seen. That can be an issue sometimes when you're going to venues, when you're trying to get like into a very narrow space or something where it's hard to get all of those angles, and then you also have to, cut truss length and all that thing. If you only have so many moving lights, you got to have a plan for how, is it that you're going to use a spotlight for the extra, like, introing the band moment, or are they all going to have specials from the rig? And if there are cuts that make certain things not possible, how are you going to deal with that? Yeah, I personally have a cue list with all of my cues so that if things do need to be cut, I can quickly glance through it and be like, oh, guitar solo for this, I can split my spotlights, and then everything is kind of spelled out for me, so I'm not trying to, I'm trying to once again outthink myself. Scaling to a house rig can be incredibly rewarding and fun, and also daunting at times, especially when you go from, you've programmed everything with moving lights, and then you go to an all-conventional house. A lot of the theaters in the U.S. are still just all conventional. So how do you adjust to that? Make sure that you have, I personally have a list of, what are my specials that if I'm going into a conventional house that I have to focus? A lot of times it's just each band member, but what if they have a big bit where they, do something funny on a stair set or something? You got to make sure that you have that all covered. And then, do your fixtures work? Can you clone them? If you do a show that's all conventional, every other from a moving light show, I just use the same cue list, and then I do, fixtures number for one, and then channel number for the other, so they're not interacting with each other. But then they're, but then when I go to the next conventional one, it's so much easier just to update those, update those groups, and kind of building, especially if you're doing a tour with a lot of different size venues, then you're kind of building on that. And I try to have an LED programmed when I first initially start programming throughout the whole show, because that's so much easier if you go into a house that has a lot of LEDs as wash lights and stuff, to kind of just clone it, and then your show's done. If you have that extra programming time when you're initially programming, it makes it for me, it's worth it for if my first rig is just moving lights, just grabbing an LED and putting it in the same colors that I would want my wash lights to be. Then when I get into those venues, I can just clone it, and it works really well. You're going to have to reprogram something before you arrive, kind of know what that is because of the venue, because of how small it is, because of, if they don't have moving lights and there's some special section where it's supposed to move or something. One really good way to keep it consistent throughout a whole different set of venues is if you're able to have a floor package, even just a small one. Even just like we had some, for the second half of our tour, we had some floor specials for the drummer so that I knew every night I at least had something that I could flash on the drummer. Stuff like that, or even uplights. And some bands will just prefer to have that because they just want that backlight instead of having any front light. And then, you plug in, you have the same show every night, which is great. So one of my favorite things is working with architectural lighting. And then especially if you have LEDs throughout, you can just clone them over and then take them out and in when you want to. I try to get them in as much as possible. There's some shows where it just doesn't work, where, it's more intimate and they only want the light on stage. I worked with one band that just hated any light in the audience, so that was definitely a no-go. But if you have like this show, like the Lea Michele show, where they have a lot of sing-along stuff, then it's great to have those moments where when the audience is singing along too, you bring up all the architecture so that, it's a good cue that they know to sing too, and then also it can create a really great moment of surprise when everything else kind of lights up. And also it makes the more intimate moments more, there are some songs that were really quiet, and if you just bring it in, it just makes it that much more intimate. I find this more effective if I like using it more of like a surprise. So when, when the audience comes in, they don't know it goes on like that or used in that way, or they've not seen it in that context yet. And then let it go a couple songs, and then wait for something big for it to open up and be like a big wow moment. And then if you are using different elements or architecture that the venue has that you don't have in other venues, just make sure it fits the design, does it feel out of place? Or, do you wish that was there every single show? Like we had this big disco ball moment somewhere in England, and the band manager came up to me afterwards and was like, I wish we had a huge disco ball every single show. And it's like, yeah, this is perfect for the show. But sometimes it can, take away if it's not. This particular design concept is Avalanches, and they're, for me, the biggest concept for them because we were doing such different sized venues, and the music is very sample based. It was great. The whole kind of design concept was, one, focus on the drummer, and two was just contrast, because they have these really, really quiet moments, and then they have these huge drops, and just, they've got rap, and then like some like old jazz songs. So kind of contrast was the design. So it made it particularly fun to go in different venues and kind of see how each thing could fit to the music. And but not every element is going to fit with each kind of show. Like I've done other shows that I toured with where the same venue, like I might turn on the disco ball for the last song, but for this it was like very heavily used. And is it okay if the design does look different for a day? We went to one venue that was, all they had was like a couple LEDs because it was a little tiny venue, which is not going to look like any of our big flashy moments from our festivals or anything like that. So, you know, and it was fine that it was different for a day. I mean, it's not ideal, but you kind of have to go with the flow because you're never going to be positive about exactly what, you're never going to get your dream rig in every design for every show, for every band. Some bands, you know. I just want to show you a couple different examples of this where the same show can look very similar but in different, very different venues. So this first one's just a disco ball. And they actually have a disco ball in the middle and then at least one on each side. I think they might have even had 4 different disco balls so that when I put all the moving lights onto the disco ball, it does this crazy, you know, factory off of like 6 different disco balls, and it's amazing. And that, you know, that was just perfect for that show. And then here's a drum solo moment to kind of depict what I was talking about earlier. Into the floor light. This is the last one. This one's actually a wall of lights, and then we had video as well. So we ended up layering the 2 so that you could see, so that we could use it. Kind of, you know, that venue didn't have any moving lights. So, you know, we used lights that we could, or used the lights that I could to kind of give the same, you know, big drum feel. So that video doesn't do it justice. It looks really cool with the video layered with the lighting. And then festivals. Festivals, it's great if you're, you know, the main person and you can previs the whole thing, you're there the night before. But sometimes when you're, you know, opener number 3 and it's in the daylight, you know, you're not given as much time and care, or not care, I shouldn't say that, but you're not given as much time to program and stuff as the other, as later artists. If possible, previs, that's great. A lot of the festivals do stay up to date with that stuff and get you information, but then it does still change once you're on job sites, so it kind of depends how much time you have on tour and that kind of thing. Yeah, main acts will have the time before. I make a plan assuming that I have almost no time. I've done it where we roll up, you know, right before the performance because the bus got stuck and we had to wait for a while, and then we were running late, and then we just had time to kind of get everything on to go, and I was like running out to front of house, setting up video, and you know, you kind of have to prepare for the worst case scenario with that stuff. What's the most important thing? For that particular design, I really needed a blue-red bump of the main lights because there's this big wrap moment that starts out like a really slow kind of thing, and it's one of the highlights of the show. It happens once in the beginning and then once towards the end, and then it gets faster and faster. So I need that flexibility of having those light buttons. And I walked in and I always knew that's like the first thing I asked for, that and like making sure that there was a lot of stuff, you know, that they had a full drum focus. So, you know, knowing those were my 2 biggest elements, you can program those things in 5 minutes. You know, depending if you have even the stage to do that. But, you know, and sometimes it is good just to punt it if you've only got those 5 minutes. I've learned a lot from from festivals where I'm working on someone else's programming and they have it already programmed. It's like a really good way to pick up tips. Just make sure that you know that you're comfortable on it and that you have all of your, the show like the back of your hand. And then also you have the elements that are really important to the show programmed in. Yeah, and it's a good programming exercise to just practice that, even if it is, if you just have your board. What can you program in 5 minutes is a great, or 20 minutes is a great little exercise to kind of see and kind of like weed out which elements. And also, I find boiling your design down to make you realize what is the most important element. Also, if you're running on a board, if you've shown up to a festival and they don't have time to plug your board in, and you're running off their board, or it had one tour where budgets got cut, so I had my board cut last second, and I didn't, so I had to just kind of go with whatever house console they had. Make sure you do a mock run through. Like I did one Avo Lights one. It was probably one of my favorite shows, but it had buttons on the top and the bottom, so I just had to make sure that I got that under my fingers before I ran, a live show with it, which was interesting, but it was a lot of fun too. So thank you so much for joining my presentation. I think we are going to do a Q&A if I'm right, and my contact information is right there.
Okay, yep, I do have some questions for you. The first one is asking, can some of this apply to a touring audio engineer?
Oh, interesting. I think, yeah, because a lot of times, I think touring, it's not my specialty, but I think a lot of touring engineers, more than even lighting, have to go to different desks. So kind of knowing, obviously, like getting your paperwork beforehand, knowing what gear they have, knowing what gear needs to be hired, that's all very, very much the same. Trying to definitely, I didn't just like leaning from the audio people, like seeing what, you got to know what gear they have before they get there to make sure that everything plugs in. I've seen some mishaps there. But I think that's probably the biggest takeaway. Kind of like, I guess, knowing spacing and that kind of thing. And I guess it's also working with lighting people and being like, do you need, will it make your life easier if I scoot the, does it affect you if I'm taking the guitar out a foot here and it's like, oh no, I can't reach that spot without, putting all the backstage people in light and that kind of thing.
Okay, the next question is asking, what is a floor package?
Oh, a floor package. That's when you, all the fixtures on the floor. A lot of times you'll have a lot of, a lot of sparkle lights in the back, a lot of LEDs. So basically any floor fixtures, and then a floor package would be something that you kind of take with you on the road. So even if you have like a trailer, you can still have, a couple fixtures that you can kind of put in there that you can just bring with you. And then when you patch it and plug it in and program it, then as long as you label your lights easily and all of your cables easily, then when you go to plug it in, it should all be programmed, it should all be there, it should be ready to go.
So the next question is asking, what was your favorite board and venue you've been at and used?
Oh, my favorite board is definitely the Grandame 2. That's my love. It's so much fun. I love that you can always learn something new on it. Like one of my favorite things, especially at festivals, is like if you go and like visit people and stuff that, you go and look at how they're programming, and a lot of times it's, it can be a lot different, and it's a constant learning, which is, so much fun. And there's, especially with macros and kind of endless. And I'm really excited for the Grandame 3 as well to see how that kind of I've only got to play on one once, but I'm excited for that to be a new standard. Favorite venue was definitely Glastonbury. It was so much fun. Huge audiences, really into it. Like, and they had this crazy sweep that they built where it was like one side of the stage to the next, and I could use that for the big drum solos, and it was so much fun. Yeah.
Okay, the next question is asking if you can go into a bit more detail as to what you meant about having a cue list with notes.
Oh, so they have, I worked on Grandemay especially. I wish I had a easy accessible one up, where you can write out not just, you know, there is a note section that I feel like sometimes is underutilized where, you know, you have Q1, you know, the lights come up, Q2, movement, you know, the second kind of light come up, Q3, the movement is, and then guitar solo, Q4. For that, there's actually a note section on Grandemay, and I'll literally write in, you know, guitar solo, or especially when it's like a newer one, being, you know, wait 3 seconds after this, or like almost, you know, almost like theater cues. I don't know if you know more like theater cues, but like ETC, you can, you know, you can put all your cues in that are, you know, and he coughed, and then lights go, stuff like that. So then it's literally spelled out for you. And then, especially with Grandemay, you can have your cue list trigger your effects, trigger all that, which makes it a lot easier for, you know, when you go to a smaller venue and you have to update to a new lighting fixture, you can just update, you know, those effects, and then your whole show's kind of going, which is great.
Okay, the next question is asking, how far out do you normally get venue information, and who do you get or contact for this information?
That really depends. A lot of times, your production manager will get that. I've worked with amazing production managers that everything was handed to me, you know, months before the tour started. And then some venues work 2 weeks out. Like, you're not getting that information more than 2 weeks out, which is also why it's great to keep a log of that stuff, because then if you're going to the same venue, you at least kind of, you know what you're walking into. I would press to, you know, to always, even if, you know, someone else isn't getting the information as fast as you need it, sometimes just reaching out to the venue and asking directly, I find that works. Yeah, it depends just who's giving you contact information. A lot of times the production manager will coordinate all of that for you.
Okay, the next question is asking, is touring as great as everyone says?
I think it depends on your personality. Some people love it, some people hate it. I mean, I did my first tour, and I did it for years. I loved being on the road. I loved meeting new people every day. I loved going to different venues, and especially as a designer, like, there's nothing like it. Like, going to a different venue every day with different fixtures, especially if it's not a touring rig, so much fun, because you get, you know, some days you get a wall of lights, and then other days you're working with a full moving light thing, and then other days you have to be really creative with your conventional rig. You know, it's just such a really great way to, like, grow as an artist and learn quickly. If you want to become a good programmer, designer, and, you know, like that, it's like such a good way to take one band and then kind of take that design into different spaces. It's such a good way to grow as an artist and kind of see what's important and what really translates to an audience, and also how to program quickly, especially. Although once you're done, you're done. I will say that.
All right, the next question is asking, what was the first touring act that you designed for?
Touring act. What's hard, I started out as a tech, and then I was lucky enough to do all the openers, which is how I got enough credibility to kind of move up, and then also the ability to kind of have that programming skills as well. So as a tech, I did Ray Shrimard and Tinashe were my first two, and then as as a lighting director, it was Earth, Wind & Fire, and then as a lighting designer, it was Avalanche.
Okay, the next question is asking, what is your favorite lighting position for a moving light and a fixed light?
Lighting position. For a fixed light, I definitely like to use the Moore's flash. Like, I do love a good white par flash or band light. It's, you know, that can be kind of nice to just have a fixture that does that one thing. And then as far as moving lights, kind of everything. I do love, I think my favorite thing about moving lights is that you're able to use them for so many different things and to create so many amazing looks. Yeah, probably the movement. What position would that translate to? I guess I just like it, making everything flashy. So the flashiest position that they can be made with.
Okay, now there's a question asking, what is the difference between a lighting designer and a lighting director?
Oh, this is really interesting. I had to have this clarified too. And there's even I think the other one's like just lighting not programmer, but there's like a step below. If you're lighting, if you're just like reprogramming a show, you don't make any decisions on lights moving. And then if you said those floor fixtures had to get cut, or they have to move up a foot, or we got to bring in the side truss a little bit, and it's not your design, that's lighting director. And then if it is your design, that's lighting designer.
Okay. The next question is asking if you can go a little bit more into your history on how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I started as a tech. I started out, first I got my degree in lighting design, and I did theater. I majored in theater lighting design over in the UK. And then I came back to the US. I did a lot of local stagehanding, and then a lot of like corporate and that kind of thing. So I was really well versed in, you know, plugging in lights and doing things quickly and that kind of thing, and pushing boxes and that, you know. And then from there, I did an internship with PRG as a lighting technician. Which is a 3-month program. They have a specific one for touring, which is what I did, and then I went straight out on the road from that. And then I did a lighting tech for years, which was great because I got to see what the lighting director and designer would cut and move, and you know what decisions were made with the design, which was really helpful when it came to be my turn to make those decisions. Yeah, and then from there, I got a lighting director position with Earth, Wind & Fire through my friend Robin. Lovely if you ever get to meet her. And she was amazing. She trained me up, made sure I knew everything about the show and, you know, good best practices and all of that kind of thing. And then from there, I started getting my own design work.
Okay, the next question is asking if you could go see a show for the lighting alone, which show would it be, and who influences you most as an LD?
Which show would it be? Oh, that's hard. I think kind of hard to know until you get there, if that makes sense. I think every show you go to, you learn something. So kind of any show, small shows, big shows. New designer, old designer, I think it's great. And also, especially watching the award shows. A lot of the award shows, if you just watch the lighting, it's totally worth it. It's kind of a different concept a little bit from live lighting because different things look good, but that is, especially if you know, when there are no live concerts right now, if you can just go watch old award shows, a lot of it's, you know, really spectacular. What was the other part? Sorry.
Sure. Who influences you most as an LD?
Definitely my friend Robin Sinfeld, who, because she helped train me up. And then also, probably a lot of the lighting movie, the TV lighting designers and directors. I'm on them right now.
Okay, with the advancements in LED technology, do you find that you are able to accomplish all of your design challenges with LED fixtures versus discharge fixtures?
Have you seen the latest Martin LEDs, especially the TV ones? They're amazing. And there's even more levels that you can program with them. Like some of their like LED effects are just amazing. If personally, I'm very, very pro going LED over the ARC fixtures because one is power, like just the amount of power that you save is so worth it. You know, the environmental side for sure. And then also like, you know, not having to change bulbs as often. And then, I think they're gonna surpass easily, you know, and they're going to be a lot more, I think it's a great trend, and I'm excited. Is there a second part to that?
I actually have a question for you, Jenny. I was just curious if you've noticed any changing trends over the past few years for women working in the tour industry.
That's interesting. I think there are definitely a lot more programs that do try to get more in. I would like to see some more follow-up on that. I feel like they're, you know what I mean, you know, checking in like on things that they can improve to keep those numbers up. I know that, especially in audio, I know of 2 audio companies that are really good about, you know, always having women on the road, and then lighting. I think it's getting better for sure. There's definitely a lot more LEDs, but I'd love to see more text. I want to see, you know, 50% everywhere for sure. It's definitely growing.
Okay, great. We have another question. Adapting your design when a performance is being broadcast or recorded as well as to a live audience, do you find this challenging, and does anything start to compromise?
Oh, for sure. Definitely. I hate to say it, but you got to kind of focus on the broadcast because it's most likely going to see a wider audience, and the things that look good on stage live don't always necessarily look well with cameras. And it depends too, is the live broadcast there, and is it just like the special and the artist? Because then you can focus a lot more on, okay, maybe the artist looks a little washed out if you're in the audience, but then you can see them really well on the screens. That can be a good trade-off. But a lot of times, I don't know if you've known anyone that's gone and seen like a television show being filmed. You know, the most common thing they say is, I couldn't see anything, I couldn't hear anything, or you know, a camera person came and stood up in front of me, and and then that was it for me. But I think you have to kind of focus. I mean, it depends on the artist too. Like, ask them what's important to them, because if they do only care about that audience connection, but still always make sure they look good. Because if they watch it back and they're really dark on camera, or they can't see the moving lights because they're not focused tight enough, or it doesn't have the big movement effect, or because what's weird about camera is that, which is so hard it was so hard at first for me to like kind of get in my head, is that you've got to focus your lights to the box, to what the camera is seeing. So you have to know what your shot is, you have to know what fixtures are going to be shooting in that moment, and you have to focus it like that, because if the artist is staged right, you still need the lights to kind of do something for the camera, because if all your movement's off camera, then it might as well not be moving. Kind of like your proscenium got tiny, depending on the shot, or bigger. Yeah, you're kind of thinking of that, and then also colors are different, which I found crazy. Like everything, a lot of colors just go blue, so you got to kind of really look and refocus all of your fixtures to the different colors that are working on camera at that, and actually look at the shots and actually go through your colors and go through your movement and go and see what's effective in the shot and program to that. Which is really, I love it. I love like the precision. There's something really satisfying about it.
Okay, we have a question asking, where did you study in the UK and what was your degree?
I studied at Guildhall School of Music and Drama. I did the broad-based stage management and technical theater degree, and then I specialized in audio design and stage management and lighting design. So it was kind of like a tier-based thing, and then by the end, you signal down to a couple things. Yeah.
Okay, the next question is asking if you have any advice for a young lighting designer starting out in the industry.
Advice. I would definitely get your hours in, do your programming, go to your local shop and ask to get on a desk as much as they can, if possible. Choose which desk you like, and then just try to program and try to get, bring up your favorite song, get a 3D visualizer, even if it's just your laptop, and then try to program, give yourself different challenges, like program, it's a festival and you've got to program now, you've got to program a punt page, you've got to program, you've never seen the band before, you put random on your phone and see what song comes up and then program to it. Challenge yourself in all the different scenarios you could possibly think of, and then just get good at programming and be around, sometimes it's hard when you come out as a tech to make that step to a different, you can get pigeonholed like that, but then also sometimes that's where the opportunity comes, because that's how I was able to do the openers. And then try to, but if you're in the shop and, another lighting designer comes in, to get gear or something, if you're there and you're obviously passionate and you're obviously doing it, then that's a great way. And then also try to get people's contact information. And I never directly ask for a job, but just like, do you have any advice for this? Or I just got my first school show and this is how I'm doing it. Is there something I can do better? And that kind of thing. And then, if you keep in touch and over time, then, they can help you move forward in your career. Yeah, like a lot of times they can, and when they don't want to do a gig, they can kind of pass it off and you can kind of work your way up that way.
Have you had a mentor in your career or been a mentor to another?
Yeah, Robin's definitely my mentor, as I've mentioned, for sure. And then I definitely had some, I tried to train a little bit to learn from the TV people as well, and I had mentors there. And then, yeah, every lighting designer that I'm toured with as a tech is now a mentor. I feel comfortable with all of them. If I had a programming question, if I had a life advice question, like any of that, because the time, spent, I feel like I could easily ask them all questions, which is great. I think I've been really lucky in that way.
Wonderful. Before we wrap this up, Brad and Heather, do you have any additional questions for Jenny?
So Jenny, I have a quick question for you. What
Yeah.
is your favorite color effects that you like to do with moving lights?
Ooh, that's hard. My favorite contrast is pink and green, which is why you've seen it like 10 times on this. But my favorite color effect, I do love a good like rotating gobo with either the color gobo or like a half color gobo that you can like do two movements and kind of make a shimmer, or even like an LED kind of like a BI, like like the zoom in and out with a color. I don't know. I love that. I love the layered effect color. guess, in general.
Hey, Jenny, it's Heather. I've got a quick question. Do you ever use P3 or any other video processing software with Moving Light?
Oh, I did the other day actually, which is funny. I did a little demo for it. Yeah, I think we used an Mbox. Yeah, I think it's the way everything's moving for sure. I think it's so effective, especially when everything's going to be LED lights. You can just really move everything to the next level, I think. Yeah, the pixel mapping with, especially when you get like a crazy color thing, and then every single pixel is a different color, or you can make, and yeah, I think it's very effective. You can get, and especially, you can get a lot more output than you can from, you know, a video wall in a way that you want to light people and have that color effect, which you can't, you know, there's nothing really that, you know, that has that exact effect without it pixel mapping it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Anything else on your end, Brad?
No, it's been wonderful. Very good. Well done.
Awesome.
Okay, great. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us and everyone for attending this webinar. As I said at the beginning, it was recorded and we will have this recording out in a few days. Just a reminder, we do have other sessions coming up if you'd like to check them out on pro.harman.com. And thank you and have a great rest of your day.